Greetings and good evening. Welcome to the Psychic Inside Show. My name is Joelle, and I am the Viberarian. I am here to elevate, enlighten, and empower with information that I trust that you will find as exciting and as informative as I do. I am here every week, or just about, if my schedule is able to permit, on Blog Talk Radio on the Viberary Radio Network. On Tuesday evenings, I am honored to get to sit down to people to discuss how they came to discover their psychic gifts and abilities. I believe that everyone is psychic. You just may not realize it. And my hope is that by having these conversations, you will hear something that sparks in you a piece of recognition or an aha moment that helps you to put something into a different kind of perspective. Now, you can connect with me and the community of people that I like to call the Good Vibe Tribe out on the social networks. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find me by searching for @The Viberarian, and that is like librarian, only it's all about the high vibe. So that is THEVIBE as in energy, RARIAN. And I love to pass on the positivity. So if you see something out there that you think is uplifting or helpful or that would put a smile on people's face, please tag me, tag Good Vibe Tribe, tag Get Lifted, because I would love to share and amplify that energy so that it gets spread far and wide. I think that we do entirely too much negative promotion, and I'm here to contribute my energy as much as possible to increasing the light frequency here on this planet. Now, all of my interviews and the people who have come on the Psychic Inside Show are available for you to check out anytime if you head over to the Viberary on YouTube. This is a repository of lectures, teachings, interviews, and all kinds of content, and you can access it anytime if you need something to listen to on your drive, on your commute, before you go to sleep at night. Please do go over and check out these interviews. That is the Viberary, Viberary. And as you can see, yes, I am a librarian, but I've shifted my frequency, so I'm sure you'll see the play on words with all the ways that things are talked about within my little reality here. Now, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm sitting down and talking with people who I have the honor of meeting out and about in the world. I don't believe that there are any such thing as accidents. I think that everything is an opportunity for us to learn something about ourselves through other people. And like many people on this consciousness journey, or even not on the consciousness journey, I mean, everybody is out there on YouTube. And you can get lost down the alleyways and byways of YouTube for hours at a time, and I tell you, I've learned so many things and been connected with some truly amazing and some truly not so amazing people. As you know, you kind of find all kinds of content on the internet. But several weeks ago, I was connecting with a young lady who was running her YouTube channel, and there was a moderator in the comments who was always chiming in with these awesome kind of tidbits. And so I started to observe her energy, and when I clicked on her name, it intrigued me, first of all, because her name was Soul Whisperer. So I thought, ooh, the Soul Whisperer. I like the Dog Whisperer, Caesar Milan. He was awesome. The Horse Whisperer. Okay, what's the Soul Whisperer about? So when I clicked on the link, I ended up on this YouTube channel, and there I was seeing videos that were just little kind of like short 15, 20-minute messages. But as I started listening to them, I was like, wow, I really love this lady's energy. They were really uplifting in a very simply delivered, clear way. And so I began to pay attention and reached out and connected. I guess she whispered to my soul on some kind of level. And so I was honored to be able to meet Hypatia Althea Grace. And so my guest tonight is the Soul Whisperer, and I would like to welcome you, Hypatia, to the Psychic Inside Show. Welcome.
Thank you. Gosh, that was a high vibe intro. I feel I'm lifting off my chair right now.
I am too. What can I say? I love doing this. I love connecting with people. And when I say your vibe attracts your tribe, I really sincerely mean that. There are any number of ways that we can find connection to people if we are open to it. And I love when along my awareness comes these little bubbles of high vibe energy that then I'm like, oh, you're awesome. So for our guests who are listening tonight, you can call in to listen at 646-787-8436. If you have any questions throughout the show and you want to find out a little bit more about any subject she's talking about, just press the #1 key, and I'll know that I need to bring you on for a question. Now, if you're calling for a reading, you're going to need to wait because this is about an interview, and it remains to be seen whether we'll be doing on-air readings tonight or not. That is not the focus of the show, although I'm always honored and grateful when my guests do make themselves available for the listening audience. But we've got the phone bank filling up with people already this evening, so I can tell this is going to be a wonderful conversation. Now, according to your bio, it says, you're a shaman, a seer, energetic practitioner, empath, intuitive, teacher, writer, wisdom seeker, encourager, mystic, minister, tarot reader, and lover of light, life, love, laughter, and liberty. But what I do notice is that it does not say I am a psychic, right? So do you resonate with the word psychic? Do you claim that as an energetic term that could be used to describe you?
Well, the short answer is I do now. But before I didn't. I always thought I never saw myself that way. But my most recent teacher told me that I was born psychic. And I guess I kind of knew it, but I never had that label for it. And then as I was growing up, that word became something that was sort of anathema, a psychic.
Mm-hmm.
You believe in that stuff, And so nobody claimed it except Miss Cleo. And you remember if you called her now, you could get a reading. But I didn't claim it. I always knew I was intuitive, but I never actually claimed the word psychic until just this time really in my life.
Now, so when you were younger, do you have then an awareness of having extra awareness of your world around you? And if so, what did that look like for you?
Well, that's a really interesting question because I did, but at the same time that I had that awareness, I was shut down. And I often tell my story in my different videos. I use myself as an example sometimes, or I write on my blog as well about some of my experiences. And so whatever I thought or felt was kind of shut down, especially in the time that I grew up in, because children were to be seen and not heard. So you were being too big for your britches if you said things that adults thought you ought not know, or if you did things that they thought were precocious or just extra. You were not able to. So if I even thought that about myself, I was limited because anything that I thought I knew or felt or said was often shut down, and I was told that I didn't know what I was talking about. And I wasn't the kind of child that went on and said, well, then just, you don't know who you're talking to, because I know there's some children that may experience that but manage to retain their sense of self-confidence and their sense of self-worth. But I was one in desperate need of approval. And so whatever my unit said to me, I took to heart, and I thought they must be right, and therefore obviously don't know what I'm talking about. So while I did have an awareness of life around me, I did experience that but it was limited because I wanted more to be loved and accepted and appreciated. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, absolutely. Was there any kind of a religious environment that was present in your childhood? Or was it just more of kind of the, like you said, the children are to be seen and not heard kind of mindset?
Well, no, there was that religious upbringing. And what's interesting, and if I had known then, and if I had had the words for how my life would outpicture as I grew up and as I went on the many spiritual roads that I went on in my life, I would have seen it in the beginning, because my mother was Southern Baptist in terms of her, religious path, and my father was Episcopalian, which is like out of the Church of England. And before that, he was following the Catholic faith and couldn't become a Catholic because of the rules they had about if you had another wife before you had this one and she was still alive, you were legally not, free from her. So he couldn't become a Catholic. But at the time he was going to the Catholic Church, I went to church with him. And I went to church with my mother. So I had a flavor of diversity very early on in terms of spiritual exploration, you might say. And then when he became an Episcopalian, I still went to church with him. So it was in the home. It was never brought to us in a way, though, where maybe some people experience, like Sunday school and the whole 9 yards, if you go the Baptist way, all day church and all that. We didn't do that, and we didn't have to do Sunday school. And my mother never taught about hellfire and damnation or anything like that. I never heard stuff like that. But she would always say, you're going to go to church, and when you're 18 or 21, I don't remember which age, if you decide you don't want to do that, then that's your choice. But right now, that's what you're going to do. So we all did it, all my siblings.
Well, I was going to say those are two very, what I would call high church, but in two different ways. Like the Episcopal is very orderly and ceremonial and has traditions that are hundreds of years old. And the Baptist is, got its own traditions and ceremonies. To the Episcopalians is probably rowdy and raucous in some respects if you came from a charismatic kind of Baptist. But again, very strong belief systems in both of those types of religions. So it's interesting to hear that it was not like necessarily beat about your head to kind of embrace those. It's really like a mixed marriage if you've got an Episcopalian and a Baptist. It's like Jewish and Catholic kind of in some ways. Now, did you develop a belief? Oh, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, and they didn't one didn't say you should go with me or you should go with, the other one didn't say that. It was left up to us. If we wanted to go to church with Daddy that week, we went with him. If we wanted to go with Mama, we went with her. It was like that. So there was a level of choice. You didn't have choice not to go, but in the going, you could choose.
And did you have then a belief that developed in your teen years or younger years in a higher power?
Well, I was doing my best. I tended to resonate more with my mother, and so I resonated with her, religious side. So I went most often to the Baptist church. And when I was, 14, 15 years old, and, I don't know if you know about the Baptist churches, but towards the end of the service, the minister will always step out and they play this wonderful music, and they always step out and invite people to come up, enjoy,
come to Jesus,
come to Jesus, yes. And one day I just rose from my seat, and I was the only person, and I walked up to the podium, and of course they were just all delighted, and that was my sort of stepping out in my own way to acknowledge what I thought I understood at that time about what we call God. So, yeah, I did that on my own. Nobody coerced me. I also left on my own years later. Nobody coerced me.
Right. Now, when you then stepped into your teen years, at what point did you begin to maybe open back up to the extra awareness that you had in your early years that you shut down?
Oh, I don't think I did open back up until I got to, actually, technically, until I got to graduate school. So it was like, a real long time before I started to explore. And by the time that I got to graduate school, I was coming out of my final exploration of what I would call organized religion, or at least organized Christianity, because, I tried to explore the different things that I could explore, the last one being becoming a student of Jehovah's Witnesses. So I learned the Bible very well, although I never became a Jehovah's Witness. But I wanted to know as much as I could know. And by the time that I got through my studies, I realized, or I felt, that none of this is working for me. This does not answer my questions. I don't really know. Whatever they're telling me, it's not enough. And I kind of left that as I entered graduate school and was introduced to a whole new way of looking and thinking about things as I entered the world of New Thought religion, which includes unity, science of mind, divine science, Christian science, and all of that, which is about really looking at religion or Christianity sort of metaphysically and positively. And that changed my life really in many, many ways. And I almost became a minister in that tradition. But I was not to end up there, I would say. I would keep going.
Now, when you were in graduate school, what was at this point then, your vocational fire? What were you studying to become, do, or be?
Oh, well, I actually studied something called American Studies, which is a study of American culture, which I explored through literature and history. So that actually, when I graduated, I was qualified to teach either U.S. history, or including African American history, women's history, and also English lit, and English grammar, and all of that. So that was what that prepared me for during my graduate years. But that was the most boring part of being in graduate school, to be truthful, because that was when I really began my explorations, my spiritual expansion. Because at that point is when, I came into, I don't know which book it was, The Magic of Believing. I think may have been the first book, or Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb, or Three Magic Words by U.S. Anderson. All of those books came into my life, and my mind expanded, and I began to think that I knew they had been selling us a bill of goods, and it was off to the races from there. Ouija boards, runes, tarot cards, chakras, meditation, walking the labyrinth, channeling, you name, all of that came during graduate school. My crystals, all of that. So that was really where my life opened up, and that was really the best time in my life so far. I mean, as far as learning and knowledge and expansion.
Can you give me a sense of what years that would have been for us in American culturally speaking?
Oh, the 90s. Okay, so that was when I was doing spiritual exploration. That was when, I don't know if I told you that, I co-authored a book with my two good friends, Keisho Scott and Cherry Muhanji, called Tight Spaces, that was published and received a Before Columbus American Book Award in 1988, republished again by the University of Iowa in 1999, and is now currently out of print, although you can probably find it on Amazon as a used copy. So I did everything in that time, in that moment, everything that was fun except studies. I didn't like graduate school at all.
Well, you made my little librarian heart just skip a beat, like, oh, a book for my list. Okay, Tight Spaces. I like that. Okay, so I made a note to that, and We'll definitely put the information. I'm going to circle back to you on those other books that you mentioned that were integral
Okay.
to you at the time you were awakening, because I love to always capture those meaningful pages that people read that change their perspective. I just love it. So I'm like, yes.
And you might
This is
also
great.
really like to know Keisho and Cherry, because they're totally interesting, unique women that, well, I just say that I don't travel with anybody in my circle who's not, quite frankly. In my inner circle. I have no riffraff.
Okay, well, that's a beautiful part of maturing and growing, is that you cut the extraneous things that are not necessary to you in your present moment with grace and ease, as you know, with your last name being Grace.
Ah, yes.
So
yes.
You were able to dive fully into this exploration then of crystals, metaphysics, science of mind, at a time when in the 90s, then we definitely were starting to see, like the Sylvia Browns coming forward and more publishings. We had gone through the Nancy Reagan era of her making waves with her consulting psychics and stuff. So the word psychic certainly began to be more commonplace. Metaphysics were more accessible. You could find crystal shops and things of that nature. So that had to be a very energizing time for you to step into that awareness. As you started to then learn more about yourself, what were the things that kind of began expanding in terms of your own extrasensory awareness?
I did have some experiences, mystical experiences, or if you will, or psychic experiences. Times when I saw, I'd wake up and there'd be somebody standing over me, or I wake up and I see just a head of someone floating next to me, or I'd hear certain things. When my sister passed away, I saw her in a ball of light, in which I immediately knew it was she, and I knew she was fine. And so it helped, it helped that I had come as far as I had come with the knowledge that I had at that time, because I think sometimes if I hadn't had the knowledge that I had, I would not have been able to understand her death at such an early age. And in the way that, she did die, I wouldn't have been able to be more at peace. I wouldn't have been able to be available to others who were more in need of the healing, because they didn't have the information I had. And so I feel like, that expanded me. I did have a lot of little experiences like that. I would feel very expanded when I was in meditations. I did a lot of meditation in that time period. And so everything was it was like new. It was really, but I wasn't, at that point, I was still kind of afraid of things. I bought my first deck of tarot cards there and then put them on the shelf and stared at them, because I really wasn't sure if they were of the devil or not, so to speak. So it took a while before I, even though I had them, I never really looked at them. So it's like my spiritual growth has sort of been in alignment with my personal growth and development, generally speaking, as I heal myself and come out of the wounding that I've carried a lot in my life, from my childhood, understanding myself and healing myself. It's sort of been right in sync with what I've been doing spiritually. And I just think at this point in my life, now that maybe my spiritual development is outpacing that, personal growth and development, because I have done a lot of work, although doing work will be with me until I cross to the next dimension. But I feel that at this point in my life, I'm growing more now spiritually than I ever was. So you're kind of asking me to go, to trace back. But it's really this last several years that I would say that my growth has been more developed, more exponential than in any other time in my life. And I guess that's as it should be.
Absolutely. Bring it on anytime. It's never any time period past the point of growth and expansion. Now, did you have then a very traditional kind of career path, or were you able to kind of begin to incorporate beyond the student years of being able to explore all these subjects? Or did you kind of just then do the regular job kind of thing, and all this was hobby and personal growth?
Well, I did do a real job. For many years, I taught at the university, at different universities in the United States. And most of the time, I taught English courses. But at one span of my time, when I taught at Knox College, I taught history, mostly U.S. history, slavery and African American history, women's history, and autobiography. That was the time I sort of, diverted from my, regular teaching English to students, writing essays and all of that kind of stuff. And I am my mother's daughter because my mother was a teacher. And so I kind of came by that honestly. But to tell you the truth, I never, all of my life, even up till that point, I never really felt like I was doing me, if that makes any sense. I was doing what I thought I should do because I didn't. Remember, I said earlier on, everything I ever thought and felt was poo-pooed, was sort of dismissed as be real, you better get a good job. My mother would say things to me like, singers are a dime a dozen, so you're not going in that direction, or you have to be really good to make it as a writer. So those were the kind of things that I got. So those were the things that moved me, the things that I wanted to do, sing and act and write. But those were the things that were told, I was told were not right or not good, or you won't make a job, you won't get paid that way. And so I just followed the track of what I thought I was supposed to do. And so for my career, I taught. And there was no real joy in that for me, although I always liked my students.
So at what point did that call for something more begin to then activate intangible steps that led you to your present point now?
Well, I would say when I decided to leave the United States, it was, when I decided to leave my job, when I was through working, and I decided because I always felt that I've always called myself an international person. I've always felt that I would live outside the United States. I would live all around the world. I haven't done that all around yet. I've been a few places in my life and time.
That's right.
But anyway, I'm here in South America. And it was here where I could afford and take the time to really sort of turn my radar on spirituality in a deep way, in a bigger way, and in an unanticipated way, because I'd already been down the path, as I told you, of traditional Christianity, of New Thought Christianity, which was a sort of metaphysical version of it, of Islam, of Buddhism, of Hinduism, and many, many meditation paths, many. I think the only thing I didn't go down was Judaism. But virtually every other one as far as the ones that are known in this world. So I had done all of that. And so by the time I got here in South America, I was, just doing what I knew to do, meditating, trying to still figure my life out. It's like, what is the meaning of it, and where am I going, and when am I going to get there? And it was then that I met my most recent teacher, who took me down the path of shamanism. So that's where I began to get that training and receive some of the rites of that tradition. So I think what I've learned or seen in this whole process, my friend Jasmine said to me that by virtue of me going in all these different paths throughout my life, she said, I think you're just trying to remember what you already know. And that was a very profound statement, because I'd done all of this in many, many lives. And when I walked down the Sufi path and I met my sheikh, came from Jerusalem to the States. They brought him in. He said to me, he started laughing, and we had a little conversation, and he said, "It's funny, your great-grandfather is standing in front of me, and it's funny that he thinks it's funny that I have to tell you about you." And which was also a very profound statement at the time, because I couldn't see my great-grandfather, but he could.
Right.
So that was very interesting.
There's two things that you talk about that I think are really important and I want to bring out. For a lot of more mature career individuals, like where you've really gone and put effort into acquiring the education and knowledge needed for your profession, and you've done your, say 10 to 20 years doing what you do and becoming very good at it, but when you realize that it's not speaking to your soul at a fundamental level, there has been a whole wave of, like, my peers, I'm 47, and there's a whole wave of people that began to be clients that were like my peers that were all reaching this point of, oh, my God, I'm a doctor. I spent all this time being a doctor, but I find that I'm not healing people in the way that I thought I was going to be healing people, and now I want to do something different, and my family is going to lose their minds. What do I do with that? Then finding people who are then taking that wherewithal to say, yes, I've done that, but I still need to do something else for my soul. Now, don't ask me what it is, and this may sound crazy to you, but yes, I'm going to walk away from the house that I built diligently and lovingly. I am going to close it up and walk away from it, and now I'm going to move off to South America or wherever my journey leads. And to not have a knowing of what it will look like on the other end of that, that is taking a courage and a bravery. And I would love for our listeners to just really understand that this is okay if you're considering it, and you are not the first person who has ever decided to make that leap, and when you talk about unlocking the pieces of your own knowing, what I have read and learned is that if you feel a call to go to a particular place for vacation, I want to go to Athens, Greece, or I want to go to this place. I don't know why. I've never been there, but there's just something in me that wants to go. I've always been curious about it, that most likely it is for your soul's reconnection with a past life that you have had in that vibrational space, and to look at that maybe more depthfully instead of randomly like a vacationer, and then look to see the signs and the feelings that you experience when you go to those places, so that you can go ahead and receive the unlocking of what it is that has pulled you there at a very deep level. I know when I looked at your email address, it was like Global Woman, you know what I'm saying? And I know that you have traveled to many places. How did you end up then dropping your pin in South America?
Really and truly, because, after the research I did about what were the sort of top places here in South America, I chose Ecuador, and because it was the most reasonable to me. But initially, I wanted to go and still want to go to Vietnam and Cambodia because my spirit calls me there, and it always has, and back to Africa. I didn't live in Africa, but I visited. And then there are many, many, many places that just call me to be there, in some place. And I know it's because of just what you just said. I know that my soul has experienced everything. I have experienced everything at different, in different journeys. And I'm trying to remember who I am. And I think when I'm called to those places, it's something calling me. It's like another little slot in the jigsaw. Remember this. Remember this. See this. Wake up. Smell this. Look at that. And I was just constituted in such a way that I never saw myself as behind a border. I've never seen myself that way. I know that without a doubt, I could go anywhere in this world and adapt and live. I came here sight unseen, and I've been here for 5 years. So it's kind of like if I make my mind up that I want to go, I know that I want to spend time living in certain places. And I don't, I do my due diligence. I do my research. I do that. I try to connect with people who've been there or who live there or whatever. But when it comes to like peekaboo, I don't, I just do it. And maybe that's because I'm an Aries and we just got it like that, leading the pack in that way.
That's true. You're a good
but I have all the
like,
elements. I have them all strongly in my chart.
Well, that Aries, though, what is this? And I'm not waiting for anybody. I'm going to go see. Energy is definitely empowering energy to use to discover yourself through the world around you. I think it's so interesting because I spent, I told you we were like soul sisters. I did very similar in terms of departing a traditional reality. And when I looked at where I could go and live for cheaper than I was living in Atlanta for the time that I had given myself to go explore, Vietnam actually came up like top of the list in terms of places where you could live very affordably and very well. But I was like, wow, that's just too big of a dart throw, for me. And I had family concerns that I wanted to be a little more proximate to the United States. But Vietnam was very much at the top of the list. And then Ecuador was, also on the list. But I was familiar with Playa del Carmen. And I know you said that you looked at Playa del Carmen at one point when you were considering places that you would live or visit or that had a pull to you. And I think it's so interesting because the shamanic traditions, the indigenous practices of accessing spiritual information, it does not matter what continent you are on. A shaman is a shaman is a shaman is a shaman. And there is a unity really in the whole practice of shamanism that defies cultural barriers such as like Episcopal and Baptist. There is very much a more of a unified connection. And so the places you're talking about in, South America, in Africa, that you were called to be at one point, you thought you might be a minister, but then you wound up becoming more involved in shamanic work. They're like cousins, so it's like different versions of the energy that you were seeking to express through yourself. And I think that is also important.
Perfectly expressed.
Yeah. People try to find a one size. Well, people look for that. There's not a model for what I'm doing, which is one of the reasons I love that you had so many descriptions about who you were, because that whole idea that we're just one thing. Well, I'm either a minister or a shaman, and it's like, well, no, and there might be a new word that comes up that I'm going to add to the litany of how I express my gifts to the world, When you first go ahead. when you first started being drawn by your teacher then into shamanic experiences, were you thinking that you were actually then going to become a shaman, or you were just kind of like experiencing the meditations and the ceremonial type activities, or were you like, teach me this, I want to do this?
No, I actually did not do that. Actually, I'll tell you, there are two stories about that. One is my friend Pamela, who's no longer here in Ecuador. She's part Ecuadorian, part Lebanese, and she is a plant shaman. See, there are different kinds of shamans, and she is the one that Ecuador is. They do ayahuasca ceremonies in the jungle, but mostly what they're known for in the mountains here in the Andes is San Pedro. And she was a plant shaman of San Pedro. And she used to try to get me to to do a ceremony with her. She said, people come to me and they ask me to please do a San Pedro ceremony, and I turn them down. She said, I want you to do it. And I didn't have enough chutzpah or whatever, because I didn't know what that meant. I didn't want anything taking me out of my own control. So it's like, I don't know what that means, but she did until the day she left and returned to the U.S. She wanted me to do that. But that's my one experience with her. The kind of shamanism that I was learning was energetic shamanism. My teacher is an energy shaman. So it's remote healing, distance healing, remote healing, not unlike what other kinds of energy healing like Reiki or axiotonal healing or angel light healing or you name all those kind of energy healing modalities. Only this one is shamanism. So I come with a lineage of shamans that I received, as well as I work with a planetary collective, as well as the rights I received, as well as the things that she taught me. And when I met her, it was just happenstance because she actually is here also from the U.S. And I met her in an exercise class, and she made a comment like, oh, I got to call my client, while she was sitting next to me. And I said, oh, what do you do? Because that's my Gemini rising, always at work. And she said, really quickly, she said, I'm a psychic. And my eyes bulged out really, really wide, because I was so thrilled that, first of all, she was an African-American woman like me, which there was resonance for me in that, and that she was a psychic, which did I ever think that I would meet one with my not very fluent Spanish-speaking self in the first place, that I would be able to really get what I needed. And so I approached her in that way. I needed her services as a psychic. And then as we walked down the street, she told me, actually, I'm a shaman, but I don't tell people that because they don't know what it is. And I said, well, I know what it is. And that was the way that began. And it was sometime a year or so later when she sort of pulled me in under her tutelage. But I had not looked for it. I wasn't anticipating it. I just wanted healing. I just wanted, I wanted her to do what she did for me, but I did not expect to become a part of it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but I tell people all the time, there are so many resources within your touch. You could reach out and touch them, and it's somebody next to you in exercise class that a simple inquiry that says, oh, what do you do? That then unlocks a new pathway because you took the time to engage with the other, someone external to yourself, in what seems to be a casual way. And I just love that as an example, because we truly have an opportunity. That which we are seeking is seeking us. And so at a consciousness level, you were not seeking to become a shaman, but you certainly were seeking to grow yourself at a level,
Always.
And here was a person
until the day I step out of this flesh, I will be doing that forever and ever and ever, because for me, life is, it's not about getting there. It's about what happens along the way. And for me, as like I say, with my Gemini rising self, I'm ever curious. I'm ever seeking to know and to understand and to internalize and externalize. Internalize what I'm learning and externalize it in my own unique way. And subsequent to that, I met 3 other shamans, my friends Rita and Henry, and so in Shara, I met 3 different shamans, additional shamans. So it seems like this is the place to be if you want to meet a shaman or know a shaman. Anyway.
Well, if you're putting out the shaman frequency, then anywhere you plant your little anchor, they're going to flock, birds of a feather flock together, vibe attracts tribe. So that is a beautiful thing. But I will say places like Ecuador, Playa del Carmen, Chiang Mai, these are places where people who are on soul journeys where they're really, they may think they're going for a yoga certification in Playa del Carmen or Tulum, or to go meditate for 30 days in Chiang Mai. These are like hubs for people who are seeking for spiritual growth and development. Did you know that about where you were going in Ecuador, or you just kind of were looking at the logistics of the town, the cost of living, what it would be like for you as a solo expatriating person?
To tell you the truth, if anybody had ever told me that I would end up here, I would have told them they were a bold-faced lie. Because the only thing I ever remembered, and I love Ecuador. I mean, now that I'm here, I love it. But at the time, the only thing I could remember about Ecuador was when I was in junior high school, and we used to have those social studies classes where they give you those blank maps, and you'd have to fill in the different countries and color them in. And that's where I heard the first and last time I heard of Ecuador. I was like, where? And it was like, by a process of elimination, the first one being Vietnam and Cambodia being out just because of distance. I wanted my first real foray living outside the country to be a little bit closer. And I'm only 4 hours from Miami. So that's how close I am if there's some reason that I need to get home. My siblings are there. We're from Detroit, and my siblings are there in Detroit. And it's just them now and me. So 3 of them are on the other side, and 3 of us are here. So I wanted to kind of stay a little bit closer. So Ecuador was not my choice, because I didn't even remember what it was or where it was. But I would have gone to Brazil. If you had asked me, Brazil, would have been the place that's always called and I still go there and visit. But it's actually turned out to be a very wonderful experience in this small country.
And you've been there about 5 years now or so?
Yes.
Or has it been longer? Okay.
No,
and
5
so,
years this year.
Well, happy anniversary.
Yeah, last month. Thank you.
So as you then began to grow, at what point did you begin to transition from self-healing and exploration with your gifts to then becoming a practitioner for others?
That's a great question. In many ways, I've always been that, although it was nothing I ever called, just by virtue of who I am as a person, just by virtue of my personality and I think I have this innate way of healing people, because I'm a very compassionate person. That's probably one of the strongest things that I have as a quality. And but what sort of got me to being in this space is this teacher, is the shaman teacher who, as me and her other students were progressing, she would encourage us to do this, do that. It's time for you to do this. And she was pushing us. She was pushing us out. And so that's really the reason that I'm actually even out here in that way now, because, as I said, my initial joy was to explore singing and writing and acting. If you ask me my joy, it never was to think that I would be on a spiritual path, although I've been a teacher all my life. I think that I was, my first astrologer said to me, if you're going to be a teacher, he said, you're not going to be the usual kind of teacher. Now, even though I was the usual kind of teacher for most of my life, I have now, graduated into a different kind of teacher, or, a non-traditional type of teacher. So I've always sort of had that as part of who I am. It's just part of my personality or who I am. I just sort of do it. It's not that I am trying to do it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I think that, as people are listening to, your story this evening, I love having these conversations, because there is no right or wrong way to be you. And a lot of us end up
Right.
in unexpected places being our happy dappiest little selves, and then it winds up that we are able to turn that energy outwards to impact others in a positive way. And that's almost just like the
Mhm.
bonus, if you will, to the whole experience. And so you can't say, well, there are young kids now who say, well, I'm going to be a psychic, and I'm going to be an astrologer, because that's certainly open to them now in this modern time. But it's not like
Right.
you said 30, 40 years ago, I'm going to be a shaman living in Ecuador. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But
that
yet
was
here
not
you
on my
are.
trajectory. I never could have ever thought that. But, I will say this because this thing speaks to me really deeply, and that is that, parents ought to encourage their children, whatever their children express a desire to explore, be, or do. And because I was so impacted because of my devotion, love, and adoration of my parents, that I didn't want to do anything that displeased them. And it meant if I had to
Mhm.
sacrifice myself, now I wouldn't have known that's what I was doing, but that's what I did.
Mhm.
If I had to sacrifice
Mhm.
myself because it meant that they would love me in some way, because I felt that I was never, whatever I wanted, like I said, was never enough, was never good enough, was never going to be enough unless I
Mhm.
did it in a certain way, it
Mhm.
it really wreaked havoc on my life. And it's taken me all
Mhm.
these years to unravel from that. So I just want to say
Mhm.
when your children come to you, listen to them, nurture them, love them no matter what they are, who they are. They're trying to figure it out. None of this matters in the realm of anything because we're just spirit beings in these fleshly suits that we're wearing, and there is no right and
Mhm.
wrong. And I just,
Mhm.
I feel so strongly about that. And I see so many children who are shut down because,
Mhm.
you getting on my nerves. Go sit your little ass down over there, or anything like that.
Mhm.
That just, takes
Mhm.
away the child's humanity, humiliates them in some way. I'm really,
Mhm.
really strong on that, and I can just soapbox
Mhm.
for a while on that topic. But it comes out of my experience, and most of the things often that I talk about I do because they come out of my experience and my healing journey as well.
Mhm.
I don't see those two
Mhm.
things as divorced from each other. My spiritual growth is in tandem with my healing. So,
Yes.
yeah, that's
One of the important things that I understand from shamanic healing practices is that those fragments of the soul self that get
mm,
lost or splintered off or retreat or separate as a way of
yeah,
protecting from the experiences that are damaging. Shamanic practitioners are, that as part of the calling, is to go help reintegrate those fractals in the inner child healing,
yes,
to pull those pieces of self back into harmony and acceptance with the current aspect of yourself. And I highly advise people to do shamanic healing work in addition to other things that they may be doing to explore, uh, from psychology and therapy, which I'm a
mhm,
firm believer in as well. But when you've done
mhm,
that
mhm,
work, then there are pieces of you that you can also then begin to do work to retrieve or do so like retrieval through shamanic pathways, drumming,
you know,
energy work, ceremony.
mhm. There's when you begin to do this sort of not only spiritual work but personal work, when you do your own soul's work, when you do your own healing work, you begin to see, you look out into the world and you begin to see there are more people like you than not. There are more people whose soul fragments are scattered all over because there's this appearance of normalcy, especially in US
Mm-hmm.
culture. But what is that?
Mm-hmm.
There are so many damaged people, damaged in the way of trauma, damaged in the way of humiliation, denial, and all of these things that you're just like tossed to the wind in so many pieces. And there are
Mm-hmm.
more of us that are in that, way than so-called normal or so-called whole or healthy. And I think we're all on the road to that. We're just at different places in that journey trying to recover those pieces of ourselves. And so I just, when I was growing up, it was the exception rather than the rule. You didn't talk about things like mental illness. You didn't talk about things like somebody has, problems. You kept all that stuff in the house, in the family. You didn't put it out in the streets, as they would say. And so nobody knew what things like therapists were or psychologists were. Nobody talked about it. If you just had a problem, my sister suffered from mental illness, and the way that my parents understood it, because we didn't have that language at the time, was that she's sometimey. Sometimes she like this, sometimes she like that. And so it would be that. It would be we just didn't have the information, and it was so strange. You weren't in the norm. Nobody wanted to admit it. So nobody sought that out, especially in the African American community. Especially, you didn't want to be thought of as crazy or anything else, because we already had enough things that we had to carry, in terms of being, less than as the way we were seen. So to be add on something else like mental illness, nobody was even going to acknowledge that ish. You know what I mean? So,
right.
Anyway, I think more people, especially nowadays in the United States, but probably in many other places, at least in Western world, there are a lot of people who are very fragmented because the nature of the societies that we live in wants it that way, has it that way, and makes it that way. The levels of stress are beyond what they should be for any really normal, so to speak, kind of living.
Yes.
And so if anybody's holding it together, it surprises me. But that's another soapbox issue that I could take on.
Well, it's very interesting, because when they say, you change there's a beer commercial that says you change your latitude, you change your attitude. But in a very real and practical sense, when you move out of the community or environment that you automatically then expand. And that could be moving from your local town to the next town over, or from one side of the country to the other. But there is a certain kind of commonality that puts a continent or nation of people kind of in the same frequency. And so for the United States, for all of our southern, northern, west coast differences, is still very much the American way. And when you step outside of the country, it is very different, and you learn that people approach spirituality from a very functional level differently. When you got to Ecuador, in terms of being an African American woman then pursuing her spiritual growth and healing, did you encounter any challenges, or was it somewhat easier there than in the United States to unpack yourself, if you will?
Oh, well, that's almost a no-brainer for somebody like me. It was quite easy here to begin to unpack myself, partly because, like I said, I've always seen myself as a person of the world and not an American as such, or an African American, even though I have taken on those identities, because that's my geography most of my life. But I've always seen myself as this person who was a person of the world. So in order for me to understand myself better, I like to understand myself through the eyes of other ways, through the eyes of other cultures and beliefs. I did, like I said, many meditation paths and all the traditional ones, including, Ifa, which is the tradition that comes out of Nigeria, out of West Africa, because my roots, they tell me, go back to Benin and Togo. But that's another subject. I haven't been there yet. But I found it very easy to be myself because, that expression, wherever you go, there you are, or wherever you go, you take yourself with you. So I'm just who I am and would be in the U.S., only with more peace, more peaceful surroundings, much more, for me, holy vibrations, because peace is about a kind of, it gives you the opportunity to go deeper into yourself, which is probably how I got, to where I am now. And I think that all the distractions that are in the Western world and U.S. culture, for example, are intended to give you the opposite experience, keep you so stressed out and so pumped up. You don't have any time for downtime. You don't have any time to look and reflect and see who you are. I mean, you're going to have to fight for that. And that's what I'm always trying to encourage through my messages, is what I'm always trying to encourage people to do, is not to give up and give in to that vibration, because that vibration is a vibration of fear, and it's meant to take your dignity. It's meant to take your spirit out of you, your sovereignty from you. It's meant to strip you and have you living an almost, robotic kind of existence, just trying to keep up. Got to pay the gas man, got to pay the rent, got to pay that car insurance, my car note's due. I got to do this, I got to do that. I got to feed these kids. I got to do all of this. You're so busy and hung up trying to survive in the United States. It takes a rare dedication for people to carve out the time that's necessary to take that time for themselves, to even believe that they deserve that time for themselves. And so Ecuador, piece of cake in that regard, because it's a very peaceful, they say it's muy tranquilo, which means very calm in the city that I live in here. So hope that answers your question. I know I can just kind of take it around, but I'm always trying to make connections. I'm always hopeful that people will see the connections that I'm making with things, so that, maybe in there's something, that gives a little bit of inspiration or a little bit of hope, or a little bit of, like I say, especially in the U.S., when people are working 12-hour days and everything else, and, trying to keep up with the keep up, and all the distractions of having people chasing for Louboutin shoes and, Land Rovers and all the material things of life that mean nothing in reality, but that we have, we've become tricks for them. So,
yeah,
I don't know. I really get it.
We're on the same soapbox. I can sit here like, yes. Now, yes. I know that, you have been like growing and expanding, and at some point you decided, I'm going to start making YouTube videos. How did that happen for you, that you decided to step into that very current, modern, connected social lens?
My teacher. I was never going to do that. Okay, so you can just say that all of this is due to my last teacher, because she pushed us all, get establish your website, get on YouTube, start doing these videos. And I took it to heart, because I really so wanted to be such a good shaman. See, I really grew up with that good girl syndrome, all my life too. So I was going to do what she said, because I respected her authority. And so that's how I got out there. But I am it may not appear that way often, I'm extremely uncomfortable doing it. I'm extremely aware that the lens is on me, but I am extremely also devoted to, once I, you sort of push myself out there, to speaking myself, my heart, my truth directly to whoever is listening. Maybe it comes back to my days of wanting to be an actor or whatever, although I'm not acting, to be an actor and to be on screen. I guess I got it, after all, in my own mini version, but it wasn't that I chose really to do it. It was that I was following my guidance. So it's still something that, I'm much more comfortable now, but I have days that I have to make myself get in front of the webcam, because I promised myself that I would do it. And so it's me pushing myself beyond my level, my comfort level, my comfort zone. It's me pushing myself to be a person who walks her talk, to not be just telling people, oh, you need to do this and you need to do this and blah, blah, blah. And I know this and I know that, but I'm a person that walks what I say. I'm not a person that isn't talking. I'm talking just out the side of my mouth. I'm talking from my lived experience most of the time. So, or I'm talking from the experience of those, with whom I have association or who I have gained experience through. So it's something now I feel compelled to do, as I promised myself I would do it as part of my challenging myself in my own spiritual growth and development. But it's also because I am a teacher and I am a minister and I am all those other things that you mentioned in the beginning. And I know that it's part of my mission. I'm on that, ascension journey known as the twin flame journey. And it's part of my mission, with or without the other person. I'm on a mission of God, as I say, and that is for me to do the work of my soul.
Yes. And the soul work starts on self first. I tell people that all the time. It's all an inside job. Anyone who's a healer has first looked to healing themselves, and learned from that experience. I do notice that you picked back up those tarot cards off your shelf at some point in time and then became comfortable with them, because you do use tarot in your readings on your, you're bringing in information, but the tarot is like a catalyst, as I have seen and observed and received your messages. Is that one of your favorite divination tools, or do you still kind of have a challenging relationship with the tarot cards? Or
oh yeah, much more relaxed and at ease with them now than I was all those many years ago in graduate school, when I put them on the shelf and side-eyed them for quite a while. In fact, I ended up giving that tarot deck to somebody because I was just like not ready. Although years later, a few years later, I bought a bunch of decks, but I never really tried to learn them until recently, actually, and really to pick them up and use them as the tool that they are. There's nothing really innately, interesting, except perhaps the story, the history, and the imagery of these cards. They're just a tool that facilitates the information that we all do or can channel if we open ourselves to it. When I was in graduate school, one of the things that we did explore was the Ouija board. And people get all freaked out by it because they think that, stay away from the Ouija board. But for us, it was the most amazing, wonderful experience. And you could ask my besties, Cherry and Jasmine, because they were a big part of it. We got so much good information in that process. But I think to the degree that your conscious is elevated, your vibration is high, is the degree of the information that you bring through you. So whether it's Ouija board, angel boards, tarot cards, runes, if you read crystals, if you just, do hopscotch and jump backwards 3 times and give people information, it doesn't really matter. It's where your vibration is, the level of quality of information that I believe that comes through you. So that's why I'm always thinking it's really important for people, because you can get, you can entertain all kinds of energy, the positive and the what we call not so positive, and that can become a distraction. But that's another subject.
Absolutely.
I hope I am much more comfortable with these cards.
Yes, and like you said, anything can be a tool. I tell people all the time, a gardener can take, or a person can take a chainsaw to trim their hedges, or they can trim them with a non-automated, little clipper thing that they actually run across the hedge themselves manually. They could break the twigs with their hands if they choose to, so you're just using a tool, but if you're willy-nilly, you could cut off your arm, you know what I'm saying, with any of those implements, if you're not utilizing them in the right. So it's really the practitioner and the intention. And a lot of the fear-mongering that has had us to step away from these things is just from either ignorance or purposeful veiling of those particular pathways to access, but you are the conduit ultimately and the receiver generally then of the messages that are delivered. Now, when you are assisting your clients now, what does it typically look like for a person who has approached you for spiritual work?
Well, I use much of my intuition, and I also, as I told you, work with a planetary collective as well. So I'm also a channel. But it could be tarot cards. I can just, usually I think the most readily available, I don't know, tool, if you will, for me is my intuition. And it's always been a very strong thing, like I said, although, I was made to believe I didn't know what I was talking about. It's always been something that's been a very strong signature in me. And so I think I go immediately there. I talk from there first, and then sometimes I'm channeling, and then sometimes, when I think I'm maybe not doing certain things, I know I'm even doing that when I'm using the cards, but it gives me a different way of looking. I think I picked up the cards because I think people like to see the pretty images on the screen. It keeps their attraction and their attention because we're in such a visual, time now. And so it's like you gotta, they gotta have the flash and bang. And the cards, when people use cards, I think it, gives people something to look at and focus on. I guess you're not enough usually, but anyway, that's mostly that's mostly my first thing. I also, read the Akashic records. I do Akashic record healings, and my teacher taught me that, and also soul clearing work, which is, when you find that you're alive. It's what people usually do or try to do when they're using sage and, things like Palo Santo and things like that, only it's energetic spiritual cleaning. And so I do that quite often for myself and for others. So does that answer?
Oh, it sounds like fun. Yes, it does. Now, we've had a whole bank of people who've been tuned in listening on the phone line. I have one person who's indicated that they have a question. I'm going to check in first to see if they have a question or if they're holding for a reading, and we'll circle back here. This is caller entering 9881. You're on the Psychic Inside Show. Did you have a question this evening for Hypatia, or were you holding for a reading?
It's more like a statement.
Okay.
That's Jasmine.
Yes, it is Jasmine. I'm just calling because I was so happy to hear you touch on mental illness, because I am so aware of all the different levels of reality at the same time. And I always say this, I always say, in a crazy world, only the crazy are sane. And I just was thinking and hoping you might talk a little bit more about that, because I know we just label people who see things, hear things as crazy, as opposed to they're tuned into something we all might need to know. And so I just I thought it was interesting, and you talked about it like it was a separate subject, but they're so intertwined to me. I also just want to say this woman is one of the most tuned in people I have ever met. And another one of her strengths is that she has this direct connection to all there is, God, spirit, whatever. So whenever she does anything, she brings in that full sense of God is in me like the oceans in a wave. And just whoever is in her focus point is blessed. So that's what I wanted to say.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you. And I want to say to Joelle that this is my friend, one of my two friends that I thought you should meet. And she's trying to get me to talk about mental illness, but if you want your mind blown, get her on your show to talk about mental illness, Alzheimer's, death and dying, young people and their fascination with the machinery, any of those topics. She is brilliant. So, it's like game recognized game, I guess. And she's very, very, very psychic, extremely psychic. She hates me to say that. You could get her to give somebody a reading. She would blow your socks off. So
Okay,
anyway,
and I understand you're a Libra sister too.
I am a Libra, triple Libra, Sun, Moon, and Mercury.
What? Wow.
Yes.
When is your birthday?
How I stay on the planet, I don't know. September 29th.
See, so I'm a Libra. My 2 or 3 besties are all Libras, all 7 days apart from each other. We have a whole 5-person Libra constellation happening. So Libra and Aries are all closely connected. So like I said before, I knew that this was going to be a connected conversation. I feel such an affinity for all the things that you have shared this evening, Hypatia. I mean, and of course these conversations that you're mentioning with Jasmine, I'm like, yes, yes, okay, yes. So
I'm going to connect you to on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah,
definitely looking
and my other friend
to
Sherry, I don't know if she's listening or not, but that's another conversation you should have with the most amazing woman. So I just dropped that in for now.
Well, this is wonderful because I will say that, you know, the issue of silencing things such as your psychic abilities of children or them having extrasensory experiences, silencing, you know, mental health and things that are inconsistencies that people experience. It's really so interrelated. As you said, because if I've had people on the show who talk about they were so empathic as children that they became codependent and then alcoholic as they were trying to substance away their sensitivities to the emotions of the adults around them. And it was damaging to them because they didn't recognize that they were processing everyone's emotions in the adult sea soup around them, you know, and had to then get traditional therapy and recovery and all those things to encounter healing before they then could open back up to the fact that they were still empaths and clairsentient and still able to read people, and then to move into a healthy way of doing that and becoming professionals. That's not an uncommon experience for many of the people who I've had on the show to talk about the hurt, as you said, Hypatia, that you experienced even to yourself by trying to suppress a natural part of yourself.
That's really true. Did you have a question, Jasmine?
I just wanted you to talk more about the mental health issue, but just to not lose that point you were making. So that was my question, and you did, I think.
Oh, I meant another kind of question, but I see what you're saying.
Well, if you're a person who's clairaudient, who hears spirit, it can be very challenging, like if you're trying to come into a traditional society or a job, and then you're telling people, well, the voices are telling me this information about you. And the first thing people would say was, so why don't you come with me? We're going to go see some people, you know.
I remember the exact moment that I stopped being crazy. I was at a traditional job, and I remember reading something and getting messages through the written word. I was working at ACT in Iowa City, and I just remember thinking, I am not going to walk through life seeing this stuff, and I shut down part of it so that I could actually appear slightly normal, and I think I've been successful, but I opened it up in my personal life.
Yes. I mean, that's not to say that there are not, you know, serious things that people contend with, such as bipolarism, PTSD, behavior disorders, and those kinds of things. But what I've also found is that things such as crystal therapy and grounding energy in terms of adding to psychiatric care Holistic things such as aromatherapy can soothe and calm during manic episodes. And again, that's not detracting away from like the medication protocols that we understand for certain chemical imbalances and things that present themselves. But I do think that we are moving more into a holistic way in some ways of looking at what we throw prescriptions at versus what we throw different practices such as dietary changes and environmental changes to support us in our total health being.
Exactly.
I'm happy about that because we're not shocking people. You know what I'm saying? Now without understanding. And I can't even imagine the number of psychically sensitive young people, and especially people of color or who were poor, who were subjected to institutionalization, who were really just psychically sensitive, and they experienced these traumatic responses by our systemic culture to those presentations. But I'm thankful that we're moving in generations away from our parents and grandparents who might have been put away. Mommy went away for a while because she was really just experiencing anxiety attacks or energy overloads, but it wasn't recognized as that.
And think of all the information we've lost by silencing those people. They were trying to actually tell us something. They were actually getting messages that made sense at some level, and then you just silence and shut them down.
Right. Well, that's why these young souls are here, you know, the young old souls who are here, the crystal children, the indigos, the rainbow children. There is having to be a shift to just experience their energy. They are teaching us, and I firmly believe that these are the misunderstood, the open ones who were shunned away and experienced great harm that are here to be part of this collective shift towards a higher vibrational humanity that we are all experiencing and have opportunities to contribute to. I firmly believe that. And, you know, for you to come on the show and share about, you know, the fact that you experienced wounds in your childhood and that you were trying to please and feel acceptable and loved, and that here you are now, X years later, living this vibrant, unexpected lifestyle that is bringing you love and light, as you say, love, laughter, and liberty, is going to be inspiring to people who hear this conversation at some future point. And I'm just so grateful for these moments and times. And, of course, I'm like, I could keep talking with people all the time, but I'm always conscious of my audience. But this is food for my soul, and I'm so appreciative that you have shared yourself this evening in our conversation. For people who want to reach out to connect with you to do some spiritual work, how can they contact you?
Well, my YouTube channel is Soul Whisperer, so that's where I do my daily do. But I have a page on Facebook that's Soul Whisperer. That's my, should I say, energetic page. I have another one, but that's my writer page. This one is Soul Whisperer. And my website is www.onhighseer.com. So, and I don't even know my email. I think it's soulwhisperer999@gmail.com. So those are, and Instagram, Soul Whisperer 999. Twitter, on High Seer. So I have a lot of ways, I guess, but that's a few of them. Facebook, maybe most people know the best, I guess.
Well, I will be posting links to all of your real estate in the virtual sense, ways for people to contact you in the notes to this show on Blog Talk Radio, and then also in the video of tonight gets posted over to YouTube so that people will be able to reach out to you at some future point when they come across this conversation, which will actually be in the right and divinely aligned time for that particular soul. And for them to know that something has whispered to them through the ethers to call them to this moment.
I actually got that name, I have to tell you, from one of my subscribers who has her own channel. The name of her channel escapes me now. She calls herself Spirit, and her name is Lee Eggles. But she has her own channel, and she used to come and she used to say that in my comments. She would say, "Oh, you just whispered to my soul again." Or she'd come and she'd say, "You're a soul whisperer." She'd just call me, "Hey, soul whisperer, I loved your message." And I finally said, "You know what? I really like that." And it resonated with me. And that's how I got it. I mean, that's how I got the name, actually, from
Well, it
her.
worked.
And I thank her. I guess.
It was apropos. It worked because I saw it, too.
And I want to thank you so much for inviting me onto your show. I really, when I saw, when I looked at your site and when I looked at what you did, I thought, gosh, she's impressive and what she's doing. And I could feel you, like I said, we met on that, other channel. And it was, I could feel you in your words and conversations. I said to myself, she's not just the average cookie. I mean, I could feel that in your energy. Because I am sensitive
I'm a
to
thin
energy.
mint.
I'm a thin mint. Okay. I'm a short
I don't even know what that means.
I know.
Now you got me going. But I do want to also thank you, Jasmine, for calling in and listening. I saw you there on the line with your hand patiently raised for quite some time, and I think it's beautiful that you're here to support your bestie and that she has found her tribe that she speaks so highly of. Many people lose friends and family as they step into their authentic selves, and the thing you have to know is that there will be other authentic selves to connect with you when you come out the other side of that transformation process.
Well, this woman will never lose me because I'm so inspired by her journey, and she is just, I could not be on the planet without her, as she knows. So she's going to have to keep doing what she's doing for a very, very long time. But I'm just so proud of her, and I'm so impressed to see how the universe is taking her message and making it bigger. Wax on, wax off moment is for Hypatia. Here you go.
I'm so fortunate. I used to look. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I used to look at Oprah Winfrey, and I would just, I really admired the relationship she had with her best friend, Gail. And I thought, but I don't have to want for a life of Oprah Winfrey or Gail King. I said, I got Jasmine and Cherry. I mean, I got everything, and
Ride or
to
die,
quote
ride
Steve,
or die.
Okay.
Ride or die. What's his name?
Steve, Thelma and
the
Louise.
Comedian.
Steve Harvey.
What's that guy's name? No, Steve. No, the Steve Martin. I think that's his name. His one of his early movies called The Jerk. When he was leaving, and he would grab his blanket. He'd say, "I got my blanket and my pen, and that's all I need." And then he'd go back and he'd get, his chair and his lamp, and I got my blanket and my pen and my chair and my lamp, and that's all I need. And that's how I feel. I got certain people in my life, and that's all I need. I don't need anything, but I need, I need the love of true friendship, true friends. I need kindness. I need integrity. Jasmine is a woman of master integrity. If you get to know her, you'll find out. And I need people who are kind and compassionate, who live what they say they believe, who endeavor to do it. None of us is perfect, but who walk without all of the shields and masks, that I'm trying to encourage people to take off a little bit at a time. Take it off. Take it all off. Anyway.
Well, that's how you're living. So you're receiving your reflection back to you, which is the beautiful part, when you are in integrity and in kindness and compassion and living your life out loud without any masks or representatives, then that is what you attract or keep next to you. You might attract some other things, but you're not going to keep all that around you because it's not going to resonate for very long. So, I appreciate you. I appreciate you for coming on and sharing a compressed version of your story, of your journey becoming who you are becoming. And I look forward to having more conversations with you. And I would be remiss if I did not mention our virtual friend Kiera at Southern Mystic Tarot on YouTube, because you are a moderator for her of her readings and chats, and that's how I encountered you. And so I definitely want to shout out Kiera.
She's a delight. She's just wonderful. She has such a wonderful spirit to me, which is why I come back to her. I just watch her videos, even though they don't have anything to do with me. It's like, I'm not a Scorpio, but she's on, so I want to go and listen to the Scorpio reading because I just like her energy, and I think she's terrific. Anyway.
And she's one of those young souls who is, under 30 that has stepped very quickly into a pathway, and she's created her own oracle deck and tarot cards. She's clearly not leaving those tarot cards on the shelf. I do hope to have her scheduled for an interview on the Psychic Inside Show at some future point. So thank you, Kiera, for making the introduction.
And she, if I could, if it wasn't such a thing, I have to wait for people traveling in order to get stuff from the U.S. That may be one of the sort of downsides of trying to get things that you want. But I intend to get her deck. She's always saying, if you want my deck, I do, but I just can't get it right now because there's nobody traveling in this direction.
Right.
But anyway.
I've been there and done that. I've had friends bringing me stuff in Mexico, but my guest next week is the lovely Kristen McDowell, and Kristen is a Reiki healer and energy practitioner and tarot angel card reader. I met her at Gloria Parker's Big Psychic Fair, which happens every first weekend of the month up here in Roswell, Georgia, to the north of Atlanta. She's a wonderful, kind, and powerful energy healer, and she also has created an oracle card deck called the Messages of Love Oracle Cards, which are available on her Etsy store. She is the owner of All Things Intuitive. So Kristen will be here on the Psychic Inside Show next week at 8 p.m., and on Thursday, we are going to have the card talk. We're going to talk about how she came up with these cards and how Spirit worked with her to bring them into creation, what the process was like for her in terms of getting them published. This is the second interview in the series of creator interviews that I'm having. My first one was a couple of months ago when I had Dr. Tracy J. on, who talked about her air angelic cards and her system of uncovering the messages that your heart has for you in terms of uncovering the blocks to the layers of love, the 12 layers of love. So I love having these conversations with people who have taken their gifts in a very tangible way to bring tools forward for people to use, and the artists that they work with to create these visionary access points, if you will. And so I'm really excited about next week's show, and I do hope that all of you will tune back in. To each of you who've been listening online and on the phone lines, I'm so grateful that you tuned in for this week's interview with Hypatia Althea Grace, the Soul Whisperer. Did you have any last-minute sage words of advice for our listeners as we close this evening?
Well, I would just say this. In these really challenging times, and I think they're challenging all over the world in one way or another, I think that one of the best things we can do for ourselves is learn to honor ourselves and trust ourselves and find those people who would help us do that as well, and for whom we could help do it. Because I think as the days keep going, as the stresses keep increasing, as the energies intensify, and you can probably tell with this ecliptic energy, everything is crazy, that people need all kinds of things in order to be able to cope. Not, first of all, your own individual practices, but also the love of people who really support you, who love you in your ugly as well as in your beautiful, and that you also learn to affirm yourself. That's the main thing, and affirm your children if you have children, because we're trying to make the world, we're trying to work it, spin it out into a different direction than the way it's going, and that's one person at a time, and everybody counts. So to that degree, I just want to encourage everybody to move, to whatever the highest they can reach for in them is. I want to encourage that.
And do I say amen, or I say, do I snap my fingers, I pump my fist?
I'm really
Thank
silly.
You so much. Me too. Me too. So, but thank you so much. And to each of you out there, I wish for you this week that beyond the eclipse, you receive the energies and allow that which needs to be revealed to you to be revealed, and that you make the shifts necessary after those revelations happen with ease and grace, and this embrace the journey and throw your hands up like a roller coaster, And to each of you, I wish that this week is full of blessings, so much that they spill out from your arms to bless the world around you. Know that the light in me absolutely honors the light in you. Namaste.
Namaste.